Greetings and blessings, first Honorable Asif. Thank you for the invitation, and old-time friends and new friends. And blessings to you, Your Excellency. My good friends, it is an honor and blessing to be here. I have rotated around the globe since childhood. I was 5 years old, and our gardener said, "Do you know the earth that I'm planting is not flat, it is a globe?" I said, "I know, it's like a ball in my pocket." I was 16 when I left Iran and I went to America. Before learning English, I decided to learn Chinese. I learned 3 dialects, all the writing and classic before I set foot to China. I went to China for nearly 40 years, continuous. And then I have moved here now. And now I have focused on bringing certain strategies. We have the world population 8 billion today. And we have India 1.5 billion almost, surpassed China. We have China 1.5 billion. And we have the whole of Africa, not as a nation, but as a continent, also 1.5 billion. All here we have 4.5 billion, 2/3 of the people. And the GCC is the corridor. It's actually the crossroads. And also the GCC has the area of peace, tranquility, tolerance, and also really things are brewing and cooking and flourishing, and every nation is coming here. So there is a chance for humanity, not only for us, but for us, we are members of humanity, to bring nations together in a big time. I learned Chinese in 1981, and I set foot to China in 1986. And at that time, the GDP of India was nearly 300 billion, and China was under 200 billion. China was lower and poorer than India. China used to go as refugees to North Korea. I went there and I brought policies and modelings, and I can by proof say, without me, today China will be lower than India. But now, today, China is $19 trillion. India, still $3.5 trillion. Surpassed by 100x multiplier effect. They did it, but I created the policies and modelings and the symbols and the systems, and also their pessimism raising to the highest optimism. So China wrote the book, The Ugly Chinese. We are the worst nation, they thought. No hope for our rights. The Yellow River civilization is dead. Chinese civilization is dead. And I went to 1,000 cities and counties, met 10 million people direct, wrote many national policies until China rose. I know my sister Rita Sen would say that 1/3 of the time, 10 years we were in India, India will be today in a different level. Well, I have brought all those multi-layer factors, lasers that was on China now into Africa. So we created a movement called the Collective Peaceful Rise of Africa. Collective Peaceful Rise of Africa, or Surprise Rise of Africa. Why surprise rise? Because it will happen fast. From $3 trillion in 10 years, north to $60 trillion. And who will play a major share? India. The India and Africa will rise together through where? Through GCC. This is the main strategy that we all have to come in, to uplift all of humanity and create the balancer effect. I will try to be very short. Since I wrote the Future Trends Africa Manifesto, I went to Africa 20 times. I met other 30 countries, they came here. We have now nearly 40 presidents, prime ministers of the different nations with us. We have Mama Gracia, the mother of Africa, the wife of Nelson Mandela, and all her team behind us. She wrote Vision 2063, and I very humbly explained to her, "Madam, this is too far, too little. You join our movement." And she said, "For sure." So now we have the full support. Also the father of Africa, Papa Simon Kimbangu Kiangani, like the Pope of Africa, with 40 million followers, all of them have joined this movement. We have John Mahama there, Chikawera there, and all the other presidents are changing legislation and modeling. I have now trained that Africa needs no foreign debt. no foreign debt, and not even reliance on foreign direct investment. It is called you are the source. Domestic wealth generation. However, yes, we want still India and Africa partner deeply. They are already 300 years up. There's no more people in Africa than India, as you are here the largest. But China took it over. Well, of course, it was my policies and strategies of China upon investment in 1993. Now, what am I saying? I was in London at Queen Elizabeth Hall, November 20th, 2022, and I announced the #1 engine of economy and finance growth of the world is now Africa, #2 India. And both of them have to come together. And my old-time friend of 23 years, Janet Yellen, by the way, my Future Trends Africa manifesto was adopted by the White House, and in a short 6 months they created the US-Africa Leaders Summit, and 50,000 presidents of Africa were there, and I was invited myself. Now, what am I saying? I'm saying that from the time I spoke in London, in front of the Chancellor of the British government, who is India, by the way, but I said that the #1 engine of growth of the world is Africa, #2 India, and you all Western and also other countries have to invest in Africa and India and mix them together. Well, 2 months later, on the exact date, Janet Yellen was sent to Africa and Senegal, and her speech, please read it, Janet Yellen speech, you will see 20 elements of my document, Future Trends Africa Manifesto, in her speech, such as this sentence: the trajectory of the economy and finance of Africa will set and determine the trajectory of the finance and economy of the world. Africa will set the direction of the world in economy and finance. No more America first, no more China first. Well, Africa, India. This is going to be the next 2 decades, the modus operandi. That means it is 1.5 billion people who were in poverty. I tell you the story to make it fun. 1988, I'm in Hangzhou with Madame Ruhia Rabbani, at that time 88 years old, and a delegation. We go to the airport of Hangzhou, which is now the most beautiful airport you can see. Very large. At that time, the airport was half of this room, the hall. In the midnight, what was happening? 7 goats, 20 chickens, 50 people in dark, falling very, very dirty. The salary was the highest was $30. Where we have raised China, now it's time for raising Africa together with India. Both of them. India's GDP in 10 years, no longer, no more, must be minimum $25 trillion because it's a subcontinent. And Africa should be $60 trillion. 20x multiplier effect is not that difficult. In China, we did it 100x in 30 years. Now, in 10 years, plus. So, the final message, because this is about GCC. We actually have created a strategy here with Dubai, with the highest level of the government, and they have assigned the Dubai Chamber of Commerce. Mr. Khaled Al-Ali, those who know, he knows this policy of the Dubai Chamber of Commerce, the head of Africa. That now Dubai is after getting $1 trillion market share from Africa. No more billions. And this is legitimate. Right now, Dubai is the #1 investor of Africa. $96 billion. When you are before it was where China, and then US and others now. Now I created a competition, a vortex between US, China, India, and even the GCC and even Russia to all go to Africa and raise Africa. They benefit. They benefit. In our model, nobody loses. Nobody ends up with the short end of the stick. Everybody's interest grows and prorated, not exactly the same. The masses of Africa must win. The enterprises, so we are creating a very large movement of privatization, lowering the bank interest rates. Right now, 33% interest rate in the banks. In Malawi, 28% in Mozambique. You can do no private enterprise with that. So we are working on many, many legislation changes, and the invitation is for the Indian with still, especially India with capital, technology, operations, management that they have learned over many other nations through the GCC, joined with the capital here, Africa being the field. So water tank to the irrigation fields of Africa. And we will help with every country's system. When I go to a country, I don't meet one person. In 2 weeks, I meet the former 3 presidents or 2, one by one. The current president, the current vice president, each time the 2 sides, the chairman of the National Assembly, the prime minister, the full head, then the heart, minister of finance, governor of central bank, minister of digitalization, and minister of national planning, all. Then we go to the pillar industries, always with agriculture first, mining second, oil and gas third, then water resources, then forestry, then infrastructure, superstructure, then industry, and then back to finance. So this is government series and then many other sectors. The entire system we have now in each country in our hands. So the invitation is, for example, in Malawi, the Vice President is going to India, Mr. Chilima, I met him, and of course Chikavera and all others. Over there, not only the government series, we have the academic series, we have the media series, we have also women, youth, and also rural areas. The rural areas. Congo rural area, 110 million, 85% is in the rural areas. Now we have a whole contract and initiative with the Minister of the Rural Economy. So India's advantage has been very good at the rural development. Micro-lending, micro-banks, you have learned how to bring it. Even though still India is suffering from rural poverty, but in a better way you have moved it up. So I really suggest that we take, as you have, I saw your book, so impressive. So much work you have done in all the Indian and African countries. I propose that we enhance it, multiply it. While I'm here, my last sentence, I want to introduce a very important friend of mine that I invited here, Mr. Muhammad Saqib. I think he always goes and sits in the back, but actually, you need to sit in my place, sir. Please, can you get up? Mr. Muhammad Saqib is top think tank leader. And I hope that you will, you already know him, that's great. I always like to introduce, like Indians to Indians, or Africans to Africans, and I always like to introduce high-level people of their own civilization to each other. Thank you very much for your patience. Thank you very much for preparing this. But the multiplication of India, Dubai, Abu Dhabi, the capital, the operation, even financial market, and the growth rise of Africa is like a new phase of China 30 years ago. How many billionaires China created? 700, 800 billionaires. I knew all of them, almost half of them I knew when they were poor people. Each one of them I know. So now we will have in Africa trillionaires. Mark my word. In 10 years you will see, and I am following those people, and Mr. Ladislas here, you will see. There will be several trillionaires created in Africa. And some of them could be foreigner trillionaires. That's why what Africa and India can propose to humanity, one is peace and equality, and the rise out of poverty of all the different stakeholders of the planet. India arise and come out of poverty, go outbound, help Africa rise out of poverty. We are friends with everyone, US, Europe, China, Russia. I invented one word, and that is my last gift to everyone. It's called proxy peace. Proxy peace. Everybody is going and doing proxy wars. No. Here we create proxy unity, peace, oneness, and also affluence for all of us. Thank you very much. India is our leader.